Today on Shop Nation, we make some progress on the compact dust collection workbench by mounting the Kreg ACS top, installing all the electrical and dust collection, building the drawers, and mounting the doors. Let's go. What's up, you guys? I'm Travis, this is Shop Nation, and this is part 2 of the build series for the compact dust collection workbench. And if you haven't seen part 1, go check that out. So this is basically how we finished the workbench at the end of part 1 of this build series. And before we get too carried away putting on a top and adding the drawers and everything, while we still have everything exposed, I think now is a good time to tackle the electrical and the dust collection system. And one of the cool features that I'll be building into the workbench is a retractable power cord for the whole workbench. What I'm thinking is that while this workbench is stowed off to the side, the power cord is neatly wound into the workbench itself. And then when I need to utilize the workbench, I simply pull out as much cord as I need, plug into whatever outlet I'm going to, and use the workbench wherever I need in the workshop. But to do that, we've got to swap both of these ends. I am not an electrician, please don't take advice from me. I'm just a dummy with some wire strippers. With that disclaimer out of the way, basically I'm using these replacement plug-ins you can get at most hardware stores. You'll see a little later that I actually need to leave the male end of the cord off until the reel's installed. And this engineering marvel is my simple solution to hanging the retractable cord reel inside the cabinet. It basically just uses the top hook on the cord reel itself, usually used to hang it from the ceiling. Now to cut the hole in the back of the workbench where the main power cord will feed in and out. I'm just using one of these little 2-inch grommets that are used for a desk to keep the cord from rubbing too bad. Once that's all done, now I can attach the male end back to the extension reel after feeding it through the grommet and the stopper ball itself. Okay, so here's a cool trick for matching up mounting holes on stuff. Use a piece of tape to transfer the holes onto whatever you're mounting it to. And voila! It sure beats guessing or converting from some weird measurement system, like metric. I'm using cable clamps to keep everything neat and tidy-ish. Next up is the iVac Pro Switch. This will let you either use your dust collector with a remote or a tool sensor. This little flush mount outlet will let you power whatever you want from outside of the workbench. Also, you'll notice I'm not going crazy with actual wiring. I'm trying to utilize as much off-the-shelf stuff as I can to make it that much more approachable. Now cramming all of the dust collection back in there. Trying to minimize hose runs whenever possible. Now keep in mind, you can add more than one blast gate if you'd like. I'm just using one, but you can certainly add 2 or 3. Okay, so with the electrical system and dust collection installed and working, we can now move on to the next step. Now it doesn't really matter what order you go in, obviously, but I'm going to be putting on the top next so that I can use the ACS to make the more precise cuts for the drawers and the doors. First, I'm going to protect my pretty expensive ACS investment by sealing the MDF top. I don't want a repeat of the shellac incident in my eyeball, so going with safety glasses from the beginning. I did this to my ultimate workbench using shellac, but I'm going to try another popular method using diluted polycrylic. The process is similar, multiple coats followed by a light sanding in between. I ended up going with 4 coats because I got bored of waiting. It could probably take a lot more, honestly. Ain't nobody got time for that. This is the only real modification I had to make to the ACS table. The standard M6 bolts used to secure the T-track were way too long, so I went with some shorter ones. In order for this design to work, they basically can't extend beyond 3/4 of an inch on the backside of the table surface. Now installing what I call the sub-top on which the Kreg ACS will sit. These cutouts here are to clear some of those bolts on the underside shown earlier. And the top is basically just held on with some countersunk screws around the perimeter. Alright, so with the ACS mounted, I can now start using it to make all the cuts for the drawers and the doors. It took basically no time to get the hang of this ACS, and it's pretty awesome. You can line up the track to your workpiece, or you can use one of the mini jigs or fixtures that come with the table to get perfectly square, repeat, or even angled cuts. For square cuts, the table comes with these really nice anodized aluminum bench dogs. But mine don't fit after applying the finish, which I was afraid of. So I just 3D printed some slightly undersized ones, and they're working perfect. You can even cut pieces larger than 48 inches. This thing is super versatile. And not just wide, but also long. This is an 8-foot section of 1/2-inch MDF, and this little compact workbench handled it with no problem. With all of the drawer pieces knocked out, I can move on to pocket holes. Now it really helps to lay these out ahead of time, because when you're in the zone, it can be pretty easy to start throwing holes in the wrong places. We've all been there. With everything marked out, you can turn back your brain power and just muscle through them really fast. For the drawer fronts, I'm using a 3D printed jig to lay out the rectangular openings for the flush mount poles I'm going to use. Not necessary, but why not? Alright, so the drawers. With these being made of all 1/2-inch MDF, I really didn't know how they'd turn out. I'm using a really simple drawer design, mostly because I don't have access to a table saw at the moment, but regardless, you're not going to see crazy dovetail Japanese joint drawers on this channel. No siree. Also, working on the ground like an idiot sucks. Main assembly is held together with pocket hole screws, then I flip it over to reinforce the bottom with some finish screws for some added strength. They turned out pretty damn good actually. I was impressed. I am so glad I had the forethought to lay out the drawer slide center lines ahead of time. Made installing them really quick and easy. I recommend it. More 3D printed parts, this time reveal spacers for centering the drawer fronts. Obviously you don't need a 3D printer for this, you just need some 1/8" stuff. So I'm using this scrap board to temporarily clamp the drawer front in place while I get it lined up. And then I secure it from inside the drawer with some screws. Once those are in, I can remove the temporary brace. There are about 100 different ways to do this. This is just one way. Now finally the doors. Now I'm not crazy about these particular hinges that I use. They don't allow the doors to open all of the way, which isn't the end of the world for this build, but something I'd consider changing if I did it again. We've reached the end of part 2 of this build series. Part 3, which is going to be the last part, is going to be finishing and painting. So I gotta say, I'm pretty thrilled with how this is turning out. This for me was a little bit different. I did all of the design work up front and then just kind of built it. Normally it's kind of half and half. I have a general idea of what I want to do and then I kind of make it up as I go along. And I gotta say, I kind of like doing it this way. It helped me build it a heck of a lot faster. The same build plans that you can buy and build your own were the same ones that I used to build it, and all of the mistakes I found have already been corrected, so I know it works. But everything came together really nicely. I'm pretty stoked. I feel confident just with this table, I can build a lot of projects. Even without a table saw, this does a great job. So if you have a small shop, if you have a small workspace, I think this is a great option. And if you have a big shop with a dedicated workspace, this just adds that much more capability. So I got a lot of questions in the first video about why the heck are you using MDF? And it's a good question because in all of my other shop projects and shop organization builds, I'm using plywood. And there are basically two reasons why I chose MDF. The first is because I'm gonna paint it, and paint lends itself very well to MDF. And the second, because it's gonna house a dust collector, which is pretty noisy, I thought the MDF would be a really good dampening material to shield some of that sound. And the other reason was because I've never built something like this out of MDF, and I just wanted to expand my skill set and see, is it a viable material for the future? There are definitely nuances that I've found when building with MDF. Now we already know not to get it wet. It also splits pretty easy, so when you're driving in screws, you gotta kinda take it easy a little bit. But other than that, when designed correctly, it's great. So real quick subscriber update, refresh. As of shooting this video, we're at 86,126 subscribers. That's 86,000. That number keeps growing and I have you to thank. So thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing. That's gonna do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you enjoyed the video, give me a like. I'll catch you guys on part 3 of the build series when we wrap this puppy up. And as always, continue to pursue shop greatness.